وسلم صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم جموع الأحباب تنادي بإسعاد وبإرشاد جموع الأحباب تنادي بإسعاد وبإرشاد نحبك جمعا يا هادي نحبك جمعا يا هادي محمد حبك يجمعنا جموع الأحباب تنادي بإسعاد وبإرشاد جموع الأحباب تنادي بإسعاد وبإرشاد نحبك جمعا يا هادي نحبك جمعا يا هادي محمد حبك يجمعنا محمد حبك يجمعنا محمد حبك يجمعنا هل شموس قد لاحت لنا أم بدور هل شموس قد لاحت لنا أم بدور بل ضياء المصطفى بل ضياء المصطفى بل ضياء المصطفى فاستضاءت به مكة في سرور في سرور في أمان فاستضاءت به مكة في
Here comes the month of Ramadan, which is a blessed month. And Allah has ordained the obligation of its fasting upon you. The doors of paradise are widely opened, and none of its doors is closed. And the doors of hellfire are closed, and none of its doors is open. In it there is a night that is better than 1,000 months. The one who is deprived from its goodness will be deprived of many gains. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the deprived one is the one who is deprived from the blessings and the goodness of this night, the night of Al-Qadr. So Ramadan is filled with blessings, filled with opportunities for the believers to get from it for the hereafter what would benefit them. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that in every night of Ramadan, Allah Azza wa Jal saves some of the believers from hellfire. They will be written amongst those who are saved from hellfire. On the last night, Allah saves from hellfire the same number that were saved in the whole month of Ramadan. So that's why every Muslim should be eager to work very hard during this month to gain Allah's forgiveness and protection from hellfire. We ask Allah to make us amongst them. We talked about an introduction about fasting, also how the beginning and the end of Ramadan is determined. And let me clarify one point for tonight before we talk about other matters regarding fasting. The Prophet ﷺ in the hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari, Muslim, At-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Abu Dawood, Ibn Hibban, Ahmad, and others, you find this in the whole books of hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, صوموا لرؤيته وأفطروا لرؤيته فإن غم عليكم فأكملوا عدة شعبان 30. صوموا لرؤيته, meaning commence fasting the month of Ramadan after you sight the crescent, and end your fast when you see the crescent, that is of Shawwal. If it's blocked, then continue Sha'ban 30 days. When the Prophet said, Sumu liru'yati, commence fasting upon sighting the crescent of Ramadan, he did not say, commence fasting upon the birth of the moon. So in Arabic, he did not say, Sumu liwiladati. He said, Sumu liru'yati. The beginning of the month is not determined by the birth of the moon. Rather, it is determined by sighting the moon. Sighting the moon. Unfortunately, recently, we've seen some issuing some of their information that they already, before the beginning of the month of Ramadan by 2 weeks, they announced the beginning of Ramadan to be on Thursday. Not only that, blatantly they mentioned that we relied on the birth of the moon. We dare them to bring one scholar from the 4 schools of Islamic jurisprudence, 4, who said that the month of Ramadan starts by the birth of the moon. What is strange as well is that, the birth of the moon could be during the day, 10 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock, 12, that's the birth of the new moon. Could be at any time. It rotates every month. So the birth of the moon could be in the morning. That does not mean fasting has started. That's why the Prophet didn't say, Sumu li wiladati. He said, Sumu li ru'yati. Now, after the birth of the new moon, are the Muslims going to sight the crescent of the new moon or not? That depends on the clarity in the horizon. If in the western horizon it's so clear, there is high chance for them to see it. If it's cloudy, then they continue Sha'ban 30 days. Although those who already determined Ramadan to be on Thursday, they are claiming that on Wednesday the moon will set after 25 minutes after sunset. And they said, so the moon will be sighted. How would you know that the moon will be sighted? Although there is 25 minutes, but you might not see it. So the Prophet ﷺ, and that's very important, did not say that the month starts when the moon is above the horizon. He didn't say this. He said, صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. So the moon might be in the horizon. Why the Prophet would say, فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ ثَلَاثِينَ. If it's cloudy, because that means the moon might be there in the horizon, but you don't see it. So although it is there, the moon had its birth before, and the moon is there, but people might not see it. What do then? They have to continue Sha'ban 30 days. It's very simple. So the Prophet ﷺ said, صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. Not لِوِلَادَتِهِ, not for upon the birth of the new moon, rather upon sighting the crescent of the new moon. This is how the beginning of fasting and the end of fasting is determined, by sighting the crescent or completing the month 30 days. That's why in the lunar months we have every time either the month will be 29 or 30. Sometimes we have two 30s. This month is 30, the month after it is 30. This could happen. So it's not based upon the birth of the new moon. Imagine this month they didn't see it. The following month, so the month will be higher in the horizon. So the chance to see it is higher. But still, the Prophet ﷺ did not say, if the moon is in the horizon, above the horizon, after sunset, then start your fast. No. He said, commence fasting when you sight the crescent. End your fasting when you sight the crescent. Very simple way. But these people, they turn around in circles, trying to justify their reliance on the astronomers and the mathematicians in determining the beginning and the end of the month. And they are finding, and they will not find proof for what they claim. Why? Because the scholars of the four schools of Islamic jurisprudence, and I'll mention some, Al-Nawawi in Al-Majmu' and Rawdat al-Talibin, Ibn Abidin al-Hanafi, Nawawi Shafi'i, Ibn Abidin al-Hanafi, Ibn Nujaym al-Hanafi, Ibn Abidin in his book Radd al-Muhtar ala al-Durr al-Mukhtar, Ibn Nujaym in his book Al-Bahr al-Ra'iq, Sheikh Ahmad al-Dardir al-Maliki and Muhammad al-Laysh al-Maliki, those are Maliki, Al-Buhuti al-Hanbali. All these scholars from the four schools of Islamic jurisprudence stated clearly that one cannot rely on the astronomers to determine the beginning and the end of the month. And I tell you another thing. Al-Buhuti mentioned in his book El-Shafie al-Qina' that if one were to intend to fast the 30th of Sha'ban and the moon was not sighted, but he intended to fast it, based on what? Based on the calculations of the astronomers. Based on the calculations of the astronomers. But no one saw the crescent. So he relied on the calculations of the astronomers, so he put the intention to fast that day. Then it turned up to be the first day of Ramadan. So somewhere they sighted the crescent. he said that intention that he intended was not sufficient. So his fasting is invalid. He made it very clear. Why? He said because he relied upon what is not considered Islamically as a valid proof. Sheikh Muhammad al-Maliki, he was Mufti in Egypt. They asked him a question and he answered that if there is a ruler and that ruler is calling people to fast based on the calculations of the astronomers, should they follow him or not? And he said clearly they are not allowed to follow him. He's the ruler, but they are not allowed to follow him because he is not following the method of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's very simple. Very simple. Even those ones who are determining or claiming the beginning of the month 2 weeks prior to its commencement, ask them, are you doing the same thing in Eid al-Adha? Would you dare to announce Eid al-Adha 2 weeks before? They won't do it. Imagine they announce to people the day of Arafah, then it turns up to be in another day. So people in Bilad al-Hijaz will be having al-Wuquf bi-Arafah on a day and they have it on another day. They won't do it. This whole process you need to understand. The reason why they do it, because they want to send invitations for the day of Eid prior, so the politicians, some figures can attend. They need some time. They cannot wait and at night or before dawn they tell them it's been confirmed today is Eid. If you want to come, they know they won't come. So they want to invite people before. So they relied on this. They do it in Eid al-Fitr, but they don't follow the same method that they adopted in Eid al-Adha. So they have two religions. One for Eid al-Fitr, one for Eid al-Adha. So even when they claim that they have this method and they claim that many approved it, which is not true, they don't follow that procedure they adopted in Eid al-Adha. And that shows that these people are misguided and deviant. And they want people to follow them. But alhamdulillah azza wa jal, many Muslims in Australia do not give them any attention. Many follow what they call it local moon sighting. Others, the majority, follow global moon sighting. And that's better because that is in agreement with the saying of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Malik, and Imam Abu Hanifa radiyallahu anhum. So three out of the four said if the beginning of fasting is confirmed in the east, the people of the west should follow them. And if they do this, imagine we have Muslims around the world starting the fast on one day, breaking the fast on the same day. So they all be united in this manner if they want them to be united on this manner. But what they're doing now, and they're trying to come together like 7 people, and they decide on behalf of Muslims when Ramadan should start, when it should end. No one would follow them in that. So even if they give themselves the titles they want, because they give titles and councils, they call them different names so people can follow them. Because some lay people, unfortunately, who are not knowledgeable, when they hear this council for sheikhs, for imams, for mufti, whatever, they think this is the right thing. But at this time, one has to be worried about his religion. You should not give your religion to people that do not care about your religion. That's the last thing they think of. They care about the worldly gains. And that's why they propose to people with certain things that are against the religion, and they want to convince people to follow them in that matter. So be warned. Who must fast the month of Ramadan? Fasting the month of Ramadan is an obligation upon every Muslim who is sane, pubescent, and able to fast. So Muslim, the non-Muslim is not addressed with the obligation of fasting in this world because he's not Muslim. And if he were to perform an act of worship before embracing Islam, it won't be valid from him. So Muslim, pubescent, the child is not obligated to fast. However, it is the obligation of the guardian to order the child who has reached 7 lunar years and his mumayyiz to fast if he is able, if he can bear fasting. Sane, that means the one who is insane is not obligated to fast because the one who is insane is not accountable. So he's not obligated to fast. Fourth, able to fast. And the ability here is of two types. First, the physical ability to fast. So he needs to be able to fast physically. Second, Islamically, because that pertains to the lady, she is able to fast Islamically. Because if she is in her menstruation period or postpartum bleeding period, she is not allowed to fast. Even if she were to fast, it's invalid and she is sinful. It won't be accepted from her. So, and they have to make up these days that they miss out during fasting because of menstruation. So this is a barrier for them that prevents them from being able to fast. Now, one is allowed not to fast in certain cases. Some mentioned in the Quran, some mentioned in the Hadith, and they were explained by the scholars of Islam. First, the traveler. As Allah Ta'ala said, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. If one is traveling a distance that allows one to shorten the prayer from 4 to 2, Zuhr, Asr, and Isha can be shortened when one is traveling a specific distance. So when one is traveling that distance, according to one of the famous sayings in the school of Imam El-Shafie, about 138 kilometers. 138. So if one is traveling that distance or more, is allowed not to fast, provided that his travel is not sinful. So if a lady is traveling by herself without a mahram, that travel is sinful. So she won't have that facility to break the fast. So provided the travel is not sinful and one has established the travel before dawn. So he needs to leave the boundaries of his hometown before dawn. If he gets stuck in his hometown and he doesn't leave until after dawn, then for that day he is not allowed to break his fast, even if that travel is long. I'll give you one example. One of the air flights, the plane takes off at 6 o'clock in the morning. So that's after dawn. So if one were to go to the airport on that day, during Ramadan, and he's taken that plane that takes off at 6 o'clock, then this plane will go from here to Dubai 14 hours. Not only that, because he's chasing the sun, the day will be very long. So 14-hour flight will get in Dubai around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 1 o'clock. So he still has few hours till sunset. Then let us say they wait for 1 hour, then they go to Lebanon. Usually they reach Lebanon before Maghrib. So see that day, although maybe 20 hours they fasted, 20 hours, but because they established the travel after dawn, they are not allowed to break the fast on that day. Unless they become sick, they are unable to continue fasting because of travel, that's a different story. But let us say in Ramadan, someone wants to go to Canberra to do some paperwork and come back. He's leaving 7 o'clock in the morning, he's coming back in the afternoon. Yeah, although that's a long travel, but that doesn't allow him to break his fast. Why? Because he hasn't established the travel before dawn. He needs to leave the boundaries of his hometown before dawn. Before dawn. So if he leaves after that, he is not allowed to break his fast for that day. Even if one were to leave before dawn, he has that facility not to fast for that day. But if he can continue fasting, that is better. As Allah said in the Quran, وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. If you were to choose to continue fasting, that is better for you. That's regarding the traveler. Also the one who is sick. The one who is sick is allowed not to fast. Now sickness is of two types. Could be temporary sickness. Now he got sick in Ramadan for a couple of days. He would break his fast for that sickness. Then he has to make him up. No expiation is due, fidya. No expiation is due. The other type of sickness is what some might refer to as chronic sickness. Most likely to last for the rest of his life. Someone is paralyzed. So most likely he won't be cured. So he doesn't have hope to be recovered from this illness. So he is unable to fast now and he is unable to fast later. So he doesn't have to fast, he needs to pay an expiation. Same is the case of the old man or woman who reached a very old age that their body cannot tolerate fasting as well. Someone in 90s and he or she cannot fast. Due to that old age, they are allowed not to fast. However, they have to pay the expiation. Now, what is the expiation? Now here you need to understand something. The three scholars, apart from Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, specified something for the expiation that needs to be paid as the staple crops. For instance, Imam El-Shafie radiallahu anhu said the expiation for each day is average size hands cupped together, filled with the most common staple food of that region. Wheat is okay all over the world. In some regions, the most common staple food for them is rice, so he can pay rice. But see, I said rice because that's what he has to pay. And this, according to Imam Al-Shafii, is paid day by day. So he doesn't pay in advance for the whole month. Day by day. Day by day. However, in the school of Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, he said one is allowed to pay the value of the expiation. The value in money. That's only according to Imam Abu Hanifa. However, the expiation according to him is different from the expiation according to Shafi'i. The expiation according to Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, it's half a sa' of wheat or 1 sa' of barley, dates and the like. If you were to estimate the value of this in the school of Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, we worked it out, it's about $10, 10 Australian dollars. Here in this country, about 10 Australian dollars. So if someone is unable to fast due to old age or permanent sickness, then he would pay $10 per day. According to Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, he can pay it up front. So on day one, he can pay it for the whole month. And he can defer it. That's according to Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu. So if you want to pay the expiation in money, that means you are taken with Imam Abu Hanifa saying, then you pay it as per his rules. As per his rules. But you don't pay it before Ramadan. Some people send the money overseas. The expiation, the money for the expiation overseas. That money for the expiation needs to be paid during Ramadan, not before Ramadan. Same with Zakat al-Fitr. Zakat al-Fitr is paid during Ramadan. One can send the money before, but he may assign someone, authorize him, that when Ramadan starts, pay that money as zakah on my behalf. Then he can pay it on his behalf. But he cannot pay it ahead of the coming of the month of Ramadan. Now also the case of the pregnant lady and the breastfeeding lady. Now they might choose not to fast because they have fear for themselves. They cannot tolerate fasting. Some ladies get extremely tired and sick if they fast while they are pregnant and breastfeeding. So they have that facility not to fast. If they choose not to fast because they tried before, they found themselves unable to fast, or a trustworthy doctor told that lady that you cannot fast, that will harm you, then based on that, she is not fasting. She doesn't have to pay an expiation. She has to make them up. But if she has fear for herself, for the baby, the fear is for the baby, she won't have sufficient milk for the baby if she's breastfeeding, or the baby won't get enough nutrition from her when she's pregnant. So out of her fear for the baby, she chose not to fast. Here, she has to make them up and she has to pay the expiation. The expiation, according to Imam El-Shafie radiallahu anhu, is the same as the one we mentioned before, a mud, that's called mud. Yani average size hands cupped together, filled with the most common staple food of that region. Now, you might say, what about if she wants to pay money? Keep that in mind. The rule is different, because according to Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, even if she feeds for the baby, that pregnant lady and the breastfeeding lady, there is no expiation. In the school of Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, there is no expiation upon the pregnant and the breastfeeding lady. Now, we talk about, inshallah, the obligations or the integrals of fasting. Integrals of fasting are two. First, the intention in the heart. Second, to abstain from all the invalidators of fasting. The intention in the heart must be established according to many scholars every night for the day coming. So at night one would establish the intention. Imam Al-Shafie said between sunset and dawn. Imam Abu Hanifa said the time is extended up to Zuhr time. Up to Zuhr time. Imam Malik radiallahu anhu said one can intend on the first night to fast the whole month of Ramadan. Anyway, if one is taken by Imam Al-Shafii or Imam Abu Hanifa and he's having the intention, or according to Imam Malik, the scholar said for one to forget putting the intention to fast the following day of Ramadan is a very rare case. Because they said if one were to get up for suhoor, to eat at night before dawn, that is classified on its own as an intention. If one is breaking his fast after sunset and he's eating more than usual in his heart because he wants to fast tomorrow, that is an intention. So to forget the intention is a very rare case. Now, if someone, let us say, tomorrow Muslims will be watching the western horizon. If they see the crescent, they announce the beginning of Ramadan on Wednesday. If they don't see it, they continue. Sha'ban 30 days, and the day after will be the first day of Ramadan. Let us say someone waited and he didn't get the information about the confirmation of fasting, so he slept. He woke up after dawn and they told him Ramadan has started. What does he do in that case? According to Imam El-Shafie radiallahu anhu, he needs to continue his day as if fasting, and he has to make it up. But according to Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, as long as he hasn't eaten or drunk anything before noon, before Zuhr, he can establish the intention to fast that day. To fast that day. The second is to abstain from all the invalidators of fasting. So one needs to abstain from eating and drinking, because these are from the invalidators of fasting. Also, one has to abstain from induced vomit. The induced vomit meaning to force himself to vomit. Let us say he woke up in the morning and he had pain in his stomach because of what he ate the night before, and he's pale. In order to get relieved, he needs to throw up. He can wait. If he vomits unintentionally, his fast remains valid. All what he needs to do is wash his mouth and continue his day fasting, and it's valid, as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. But if he were to force himself to vomit by putting his finger inside and vomiting, then this invalidates his fast. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, "Man zara'ahu al-qay' wa huwa sa'im zara'ahu ghalabahu wa huwa sa'im falaysa alayhi qada wa man istaqa'a falyaqdi." Meaning, the one who vomits unintentionally doesn't have to make it up, meaning his fast is still valid. وَمَنْ اسْتَقَاءَ, the one who forced himself to vomit, فَلْيَقْضِي, let him make up that day, because this is amongst the invalidators of fasting. Also, one has to abstain from sexual intercourse, because that invalidates one's fast as well. That invalidates one's fast as well. Not only that, this case is a bit more severe than other cases. Because if one were to invalidate his fast by having sexual intercourse with his wife, first of all, he has to make up that day, and he is committing a major sin. Third, he has to pay the expiation. And the expiation here is not like the other expiation. The expiation for invalidating his fast by having sexual intercourse is to free a Muslim slave. And because now it's not available, he would go to the second option, which is to fast 2 consecutive lunar months. 2 consecutive lunar months. If he were to break the fast on a day, he has to start all over again. The 2 months. 2 consecutive lunar months. If unable to fast 2 consecutive lunar months, then he can feed 60 poor Muslims, each one of them mud of the most common staple food of that region. So here, see, he has to make it up, plus he has to pay the expiation. Yeah, if some kisses his wife with an arousing kiss, and he has that fear that he might have ejaculation of the mani, then this is haram. And if he has that ejaculation of mani, he has to make up that day because that was invalidated. Because it's through contact, body contact. Whether it is like touching her skin or kissing her with arousement, then he had the emission of the mani, he has to make up that day. That invalidates his fast. But not if someone was sleeping during the day and he had a wet dream, because this may happen. If someone was sleeping during the day, then he had a wet dream, his fast remains valid. But he has to have the shower, the full body wash, in order to be allowed to pray. In order to be allowed to pray. Also, one needs to abstain from falling into blasphemy in Ramadan and other than Ramadan at all times. He needs to protect himself from falling into blasphemy. Sometimes a person may say a word that is blasphemous. Unfortunately, some people, even about Ramadan, they throw jokes. And in some of these jokes, there is belittlement for this act of worship. Only a couple of days ago, someone sent me a question. Someone was joking about Ramadan in a certain way, and he committed blasphemy because he was belittling the month of fasting. So if one were to fall into blasphemy during the day of fasting, he must come back to Islam immediately by uttering the two testifications of faith. He has to continue his day as if fasting, and he has to make it up. Some people may commit blasphemy by swearing at Allah, swearing at the Prophet, swearing at the religion, mocking the religion, or by believing what does not befit Allah Azza wa Jal, such as to believe that Allah is a body, or that Allah has limbs and organs. This is a blasphemous belief. So if someone believed something blasphemous during the day of fasting, then they told him this is blasphemous, then he cleared himself from it by uttering the two shahadas, then in that case, his fasting is invalidated. He has to continue his day as if fasting, and he has to make it up after Ramadan. Also, the one who is fasting needs to abstain from inserting into his body cavity, whether to the stomach or to the head, anything that has a volume. So it doesn't have to be food, could be medicine, could be something different, even a stone. If one were to swallow a stone while fasting, that invalidates his fast. So anything that goes into his body cavity, to the stomach or to the head, through an open inlet like the mouth, the nose, and the private part, this invalidates his fast. Because these are called open inlets. Now, regarding the E, according to Imam El-Shafie radiallahu anhu, some said in the school of Imam El-Shafii, it is an open inlet. They said because you put eardrops, you can feel the taste in your throat. So that's an open inlet. Some said, no, it's not an open inlet. Rather, what happens is the pores absorb the medicine and it goes inside. They said it's similar like rubbing oil on your throat. If you do that, you feel the taste inside. Although the throat is not an open inlet here from outside. But when you rub the oil here, the medicine will go inside through the pores. This does not invalidate your fast. They said the ear is not an open inlet. Some said it is an open inlet. So if you use eardrops according to that saying, that invalidates your fast. The eye is not an open inlet. So if you have eye drops, so even if you feel with a taste in your throat, this does not invalidate your fast. So these are the open inlets to your body cavity. That means any question that you may refer to about using injection in the muscle, in the vein, this under the skin, this does not invalidate your fast because that's not an open inlet. Having a blood test, some people ask during Ramadan, does not invalidate your fast because nothing is going into your body cavity through an open inlet. So even if someone were to have a drip in his vein, drip, the normal drip, if he doesn't eat or drink, his fast is valid. Because nothing is going into his body cavity, to the stomach or to the head, through an open inlet. Now regarding the saliva you can swallow it as many times as you want during the day of fasting. This does not invalidate your fast, provided that it is pure and not mixed and changed with another substance. When we say pure, that means if it is contaminated with najis, you cannot swallow it. Like what najis? Like the vomit. So if someone were to unintentionally vomit during the day of fasting, before swallowing back his saliva, he needs to wash his mouth. If he swallows his saliva that is mixed with the vomit, that invalidates his fast. Some people suffer from gum bleeding during the day of fasting. So the saliva will get contaminated with the blood. If they swallow that saliva that is contaminated with the blood, this invalidates their fast. Now, if it's a pure substance, like what? Drinking, for instance, cordial or coffee before dawn. If you don't wash your mouth thoroughly after dawn, when you are gathering your saliva inside your mouth, you can still, it is changed with the coffee or the cordial. So if you swallow the saliva that is mixed with that cordial or the saliva, this invalidates your fast. So you have to be cautious. So clean your mouth thoroughly before dawn. And that's why there is something called al-imsak, which is to stop before dawn by at least 10 minutes. Just to make sure that you won't swallow anything after dawn, just to be on the safe side. Now regarding using the puffer for the one who is asthmatic, the puffer is medicine. And you know the puffer contains what? Medicine. When you buy it first, you can feel the medicine in it. So when you inhale the medicine inside, every time you use it, then in the end, will run out of that medicine. So where did that medicine go? Inhaled into your lungs. That's why you feel relieved. If you have asthma, you feel relieved after using the puffer. Why? Because the medicine went inside. So that invalidates your fast. That invalidates your fast. So if someone were to say, but I'm sick, I need to use it, we say to him, try to use it before dawn. And if during the day you found yourself in need of using it, you can use it and break your fast. And you have here an excuse, as Allah said, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. He needs to make them up later. But some unfortunately said to them, you can still use the puffer and this does not invalidate your fast. So they are inhaling the medicine into their lungs and they say, you are still fasting. So you see them use the puffer but they don't eat or drink and the fast is invalid. And there is a fatwa even from Al-Azhar in Egypt precisely about the puffer. It's strange how these people say it doesn't invalidate your fast. Then they say about smoking a cigarette invalidates your fast. What separates from the cigarette is like a smoke, and the nicotine, whatever, is less than even what separates from that puffer. So it's like a smoke, it goes inside. So if the puffer does not invalidate one's fast according to them, then smoking a cigarette won't invalidate one's fast. So it's not about eating something to feel full during Ramadan. Even like as I told you, you may swallow a stone intentionally. That invalidates your fast. Also, if someone is having a hot shower during the day of fasting, and while having that hot shower during the day of fasting, you know, the water vapor will be all around, the steam will be around. This does not invalidate one's fast. That's exempted. Because he's not intending on purpose to inhale the steam inside. The steam inside. Some ladies ask, while I'm cooking, sometimes I remove the lid of the pot while I'm cooking to see the food, and the steam will go up, might go inside. You're not doing this intentionally, so this does not invalidate your fast. If we assume hypothetically that a lady opened the lid and put the head on top of that pot to inhale the steam, then this invalidates her fast. But she wouldn't do this usually, just normal process of cooking. She would uncover the pot and the steam will go up. That's normal. This does not invalidate her fast. If someone eats or drinks during the day of fasting while forgetting his fasting, his fast remains valid. His fast remains valid, as the Prophet ﷺ said, من أكل أو شرب من نسي وهو صائم فأكل أو شرب فليتم صومه فإنما أطعمه الله وسقاه. So the one who forgets that he's fasting and he eats and drinks during the day of fasting, the Prophet said, let him continue his fast, because Allah Azza wa Jal willed for him to eat and drink. But if you see him eating and drinking, you tell him you are fasting. You remind him. You remind him that he is fasting, so he would stop. Yes, some people may forget. They may eat and drink. It could happen. If someone were to become insane during the day of fasting, even for one moment, this invalidates his fast, and he doesn't have to make it up, because when he becomes insane, he's no longer accountable. So that invalidates his fast, and he doesn't have to make it up. If one were to lose his consciousness during the day of fasting, if it doesn't take the whole day from dawn till sunset, his fast remains valid. Some people, let us say, may fall at work and they become unconscious for half an hour. So the fast is valid in that case. If one also were to sleep even for the whole day, his fast remains valid. But of course, he's missing a lot. In some countries, in winter, the day is very short. The day is very short. In summer, the day is very long. You know, in some countries, they fast about 21 hours. 21 hours. That's in summer. In winter, so they will have only a few hours. That's the day of fasting. So if someone slept, let us say, before dawn, woke up after sunset, in such countries, his fast remains valid. because he slept the whole day. But of course, he's missing the rewards and the like. Now, the last thing I would like to mention is about the day of the doubt. The day of the doubt, Yawm al-Shak. The day of the doubt is the 30th of Sha'ban, when none of those whose testimony is accepted by the judge testified before the judge that he has seen the crescent of Ramadan. Rather, maybe some kids, a group of kids, enormous sinners, were talking about seeing the crescent. But their testimony won't be accepted by the judge. So if they were to go to the judge, they said a child, he doesn't take by his testimony in that case. Also, the major sinner, it won't be accepted from him. But a group of them were talking about seeing the crescent the night before. So, but none of those trustworthy testified before the judge that he had seen the crescent. Here it becomes the day of doubt. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا تقدموا رمضان بيوم أو يومين. Do not start or commence fasting Ramadan a day before or 2 days before. Start fasting when you see the crescent and end your fast when you see the crescent. So meaning, in the case of the day of the doubt, if someone were to say, I don't know, they didn't confirm it, but some are talking about seeing the crescent, but their shahada is not accepted by the judge. If one were to say, I'll fast tomorrow of Ramadan just in case, no, that's haram, that's sinful. That's haram and that's sinful. Ammar ibn Yasir radiallahu anhu said, whoever fasts the day of the doubt has disobeyed Abul Qasim. Abul Qasim meaning the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. By this we have concluded most of the cases pertaining to fasting and the invalidators. And we mentioned before, but I'll mention it now, that gossip does not invalidate one's fast. And there is no hadith that says 5 matters invalidate the fasting of a person, and they mention amongst them the gossip, the kissing. This is a fabricated hadith. So gossip does not invalidate one's fast. However, the tale-bearing, meaning spreading words between 2 or more to spread enmity between them, that's called namima. Namima. And to give a false testimony before the judge. Such sins would take away the reward of fasting. But the fast is still valid, but they take away the reward of fasting. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to fast the month of Ramadan and to make us amongst those who will be protected during this month. Ameen. And Allah knows best. We say La ilaha illallah and make salah on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
يا المصطفى